please welcome one of the founders of the BMA Forum, Mr. Sumit Oberoi.
Thanks, Simon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be here today as part of the annual Construction Innovation Forum. Not only I wanted to acknowledge Simon's great work, keeping everyone on the right path, but I also want to acknowledge the great team from the AMCA, led by Shannon, Thomas and Amanda, for really, moving it from a physical event to a virtual event. They should be commended for going for it. So, well done. For those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Sumit Oberoi, and I've recently joined the Autodesk Construction Solutions. This afternoon, I have the great pleasure of moderating a very, very star-studded lineup of leaders throughout the UK and throughout Australia. Many of you would know that Rafiq usually does this session and does a great job, and I've really been fortunate that Rafiq has given me the opportunity, or should I say allowed the opportunity to take on this great panel moderation. Prior to introducing the esteemed panel members, I just wanted to go through some of my slides, if that's okay. So that was my intro one. But today we're really talking about opportunity. We've all been put in a number of different pressure points as business leaders within our own families and also within the industry. So what I want to really do is really hone into how we as an industry can find ways to address and rebound from COVID-19. So we want to look at what the business models are. We want to look at how we can engage with the government and to stimulate the economy. There was a fair bit of announcements last night, particularly with the Commonwealth Government, in terms of where they're going to support the industry, and we'll find, just what Matt was saying earlier, a lot of investment around building and construction. We want to look at ways in which we can really engage with the supply chain, and picking up on Matt's point, what does the high performance industry look like? What does a sustainable industry look like? Sustainability isn't just about, moving towards net carbon industry, but it's also, or net carbon zero industry, but it's also about a sustainable industry where the supply chain can work well together and perform well. So this is the star-studded lineup that I have the pleasure of moderating today. So my job will be very, very easy, of course. All I need to do is, just throw a few darts at a few of these wonderful gentlemen. We have Richard Drigo joining us, who's the Managing Director of Freedom Air. We have the great Alain Waha from Cogital in the UK. We also have Scott Olson, newly appointed Chief Executive Officer with Freedom Group. And the Freedom Group is a multi-services group, and we do welcome Scott on board with this new role. We've got Neil Thompson, who's a great friend of ours who presented back in 2014. And of course, we've given Matt a chance to grab a coffee, a water, a Red Bull, and maybe a V energy drink, because he set his alarm nice and early this morning. So did Neil and of course Alain, but Alain never sleeps anyway, so we know that. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome.
Afternoon, Sumit.
Good afternoon, Richard. Well, I'll start with you then, Richard. How about you introduce yourself? I've given a very brief overview. You are the National Vice President. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently working on.
Okay, so Richard Drigo is my name. I've been involved with the industry for just a little bit over 30 years now, from an engineering to project management, construction management, into roles as construction directors, and then through to my current role as a group managing director of Freedom. I sit across all the states. It gives me a fairly good insight on what's going on nationally. And it's fair to say, of course, there's some varying activities given particularly what's going on in Victoria, but we're seeing some headways there going forward with some relaxations, if you like, of the stages of isolation. And of course, New South Wales, Canberra, across to Western Australia, and we'll do some work over in New Zealand as well.
Thank you, Richard. And I'd like to welcome Scott Olson, the newly appointed Chief Executive Officer. He's actually moved from being a head contractor to a specialist contractor. So that will give us a bit of ammunition today to fire a few tough questions towards you, Scott. But welcome on board.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, and morning to Matt, and thank you for your presentation, mate. That was fantastic. Just to sort of kick things off, I'll just sort of put a caveat out there that I've been in the role now for over 12 months. I'm not a mechanical contractor, so be gentle on the mechanical questions. But I have been in the industry for 25 years, mostly in the civil engineering building arena with companies like John Holland, Lend-Lease, Leighton Holdings, those sort of companies. And I suppose more, sort of grew up around the sort of delivering projects into sort of more business unit roles. And I've now had the fortunate opportunity in taking over as the group CEO of Freedon. So thanks for the opportunity to talk this afternoon. I think it's a really sort of valid topic to discuss. And I sit on a board called Roads Australia, and it's a long conversation with our board and our members around the changing landscape in the industry. But if there is ever a time now on the back of fires and COVID to change the industry, it's got to be now. So if there's not a call to arms now, I'm not sure when it will ever be. So I'm interested in the conversation this afternoon.
Thank you, Scott, and great to have you on board this afternoon. I'll hand it over to Neil Thompson. Welcome back, Neil. It's fantastic to have you here. I mean, we had a lot of fun when you were out here in 2014, and you were a head contractor then with Balfour Beatty, and we've been following a lot of your progress, and I must admit I've been enjoying your digital twin radio show that you're running. It's a lot of fun. You, just like Matt earlier, you were comparing the music industry, and Alain's lectured me plenty of times on the music industry, but as we move towards the third platform. But great to have you on board.
Thank you, and thank you for accepting to be part of the podcast as well. So I capture that opportunity. Hello, everyone. My name is Neil Thompson. I was reflecting this on the other day as we were sort of reforming our CVs for a bit, and realised that I've been nearly 20 years of, how can I put it, implementing technology in complex environments. So just a bit of context, implementing Revit in the architecture environment before it was acquired by Autodesk. So that sort of gives you a timeline there. So I'm Director of Digital Construction at Atkins, and I have three roles. One that takes up most of my time is being the program lead for the Centre for Digital Build Britain, which is a joint venture between UK government and Cambridge University. I'm sort of the partner representative on a broader thing called the Construction Innovation Hub. So if you think about the things that Matt were talking about, how do we incentivize the rest of the market and public procurers to ask the industry to go down a modern methods of construction route, and all the things that we need to do to enable that from a manufacturing and digital perspective, and I head up that digital aspect. I'm also the UK and Europe lead for digital twins. What that means is, looking at how do we structure the work that we do to suit to suit the new world. How do we connect our infrastructure to the internet and all that stuff. And please tune into my presentation tomorrow where I'll talk about that in more detail. My other role, I lead globally for SNC-Lavalin, which is the main company that acquired Atkins a few years ago now. I head up how we're building a new type of integration service where we integrate everything that we do, from finances through to operating assets and everything in between. So I have lots of roles, and hopefully can draw on that experience to help with this discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. And with all of those duties, I think you're another person that struggles to sleep. So plus a couple of young kids to throw in the mix as well. I'll hand it over to our great man, Alain Waha, who's been out to Australia on many, I won't use the word junkets, on many speaking engagements, and brought a lot of great friendship connecting different people along the way, and also really pushing the way in which the mechanical industry relates with the consulting industry and the head contracting industry, which has been great. So Alain, welcome on board.
Yes, good afternoon, Melbourne and Australia. I would like to first say that obviously this does not compare whatsoever with what we'll all like to be doing. So I can report that it is not raining in London, but it isn't as warm as being amongst friends and being able to stress and challenge each other through this wonderful forum that you host every year. So with that proviso and restating the obvious, I'd look forward to having a really challenging discussion summit. I think about 6-7 months ago, COVID hit. And as Matt said, we have seen in 5 months, 5 years of digital transformation and change hitting our industry. I would argue it's 50, and I'll just leave it there. I came to this industry 15 years ago. I thought it was ripe for disruption. I thought the time was there. I was further confirmed in my belief that it was going to transform dramatically because the UK government announced in 2008 that we were going to digitize. And really, I'm hoping that finally with COVID, we will see that change. This industry must change, as Matt said. And I think we can, through these Construction Innovation Forum exploration, really make it change. And Matt finished on gradually, then suddenly. Remember, Nokia lost its #1 position on mobile phones by missing the shift to smartphone by 1/4. There will be a moment where doing it the old way will not cut anymore. And those that know how to do it the new way and have a smartphone, have a smart business, have a smart approach to construction will survive. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Thanks, Alain. That was great. And Matt, we've given you a chance to have a couple of glasses of water and a short macchiato, and you're ready to go. Welcome on board. A fantastic presentation once again. And you mentioned you were out here last year as part of the World Engineering Forum. I know you connected with a number of with our close friends, and the world has changed significantly. You did give a great visionary piece in terms of where you want to see the industry, where you want to see a greater generation of our industry. But in terms of the IC discussion, what are some of the steps that we need to start to think about as we move forward?
Yeah, thanks, Sumit. It's good to see you. And I may well have indulged in all of those drinks, coffees, energy drinks, waters, etc. that you just referenced in the intro there. It's a nice early morning, early start for us. What are the changes that we want to see? I think we're trying to help prioritize what we do by focusing on, I guess, 3 key areas moving forward. What we refer to as our what could be our differentiators. Firstly is net zero carbon. So we've got a massive push around this in our business. How do we get better at it? How do we get more effective? How can we have a more positive impact? That's not led by a small group of people. That's got to be everybody's job. So next year we have kind of set out a really quite exciting, intensive training program for everybody around, what do they need to learn specific to their job role that would allow them to have a better impact on the environment. And Mace is quite a diverse business. We develop, consult, construct and operate. We've got 5,500 people working globally currently. And each and every one of those, we believe, has got an opportunity to do something differently, to help to drive the change. and we're going to train them, and we're going to give them the tools and the skills that will hopefully allow them to go out and make that positive change happen. Our second area is, as touched on the keynote, construction to production. Super keen to see the industry continue to develop new business models that allow us to achieve better outcomes and to fix a lot of those, long-standing pain points or problems that we have within the industry. We're not integrated. We're far too disconnected, disintermediated. There's far too much focus on ineffective process. Everything is up for grabs, and that's a really exciting time to be in the industry, because the job role that you have today is probably going to be very different in 2 years' time. It's absolutely going to be different in 5 years. Who would not want to be a part of that?
Yeah.
And then lastly, technology, or we refer to it, digital or data. It's a big bucket. It needs to be. Technology continues to accelerate at such a pace. It's almost, it's hard to keep up. But you need to be agile, and you need to be early adopters, and you need to be really trying to use technology across all parts of the process to enable you to do your job better, more effectively, improve your productivity, etc. So those are the kind of three broad areas that we think are really important for companies like us, and therefore that we feel are important for the industry at large.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Scott, I might just turn to you, just picking on a couple of things that Matt was talking about of trying to understand the way in which we're dealing with our project teams differently. You've come from a head contracting background. Now you're 12 months in at Freedon across the group, and Freedon is quite a broad business in many respects because it's, construction, there's a whole range of different trades going on. Is there anything in those sort of businesses that you're sort of finding that things that can be replicated in different parts of your business for the betterment of the broader Freedon group?
Look, I think it sort of goes back into some of the things that Matt's been discussing, but what we've also seen in the industry to date. I mean, it's fair to say that we as an industry in Australia has been very slow in the uptake of change. We've been very slow in the uptake of technology. We've been very slow in promoting or rewarding research development or innovation. And I think that's got a lot to do with our governments. Governments generate a lot of opportunity. They invest a lot in infrastructure. And you can see for a country like ours, it's still growing. It's still young in a lot of ways. You've really got to look at government as an opportunity to try and create or try and sort of change the way we do things. And what we're seeing, what I've seen and where I've come from, the current contract models and the current procurement models that we use are just out of date. No one in Australia or struggling to make money. They're struggling to deliver the projects effectively. And the way the projects are procured through the scope doesn't give you any opportunity to break those projects down properly and to actually shake up the way that things are being delivered. I mean, we see our business, particularly our multi-service offering and what we do in our business around mechanical or electrical or the audio visual or the like, is that we could actually offer integrated type approaches to any of our clients and the solution. But you've got to make sure that the main contract itself or what the main contractors want to gives you the flexibility in doing it. And the only way that I see that changing in Australia is that the procurement model, the government contract models need to change. There needs to be a lot more collaborative upfront approach and input from the supply chain in how it's done. The risk profile needs to be rethought through, and we need to ask ourselves, what sort of risk profile are we prepared to take? What capacity capability can we offer? And they've then got to be able to try and break those projects up differently so that you can sort of share some of the work around, and the contractor itself becomes more of an MC or project manager in delivering those sort of projects.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be huge benefits if we can actually change that, be more collaborative in the approach. And I think longer term, we're going to get better outcomes.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we've had a lot of government procurement models, a lot of specifications. I think we've even had cases, I don't think even consistently in Australia, what sort of BIM model that our clients actually want. We can't even get consistency around that. So there's a lot of work that we need to do, but those areas for me as an industry, what we've got to focus on, and I think we as a business, we can answer to that. But there's got to be a change up the line to promote that. And there's got to be different drivers to promote it, because at the moment there is wrong drivers out there. And I think, Matt, you made a really good point about that lowest cost price. I think that's still a lot in governments and clients. What the ultimate sort of way of how you win a contract is through the lowest cost model. It's not around what the long-term benefits are, or what's the whole of life benefits or the like. So if we can change those drivers, change the procurement models, I think there's more opportunities for companies like us and the longer and the bigger supply chain to deliver projects more effectively and efficiently.
Thanks. Neil, you were nodding your head a little bit there. You've seen it from a few different angles. I just wanted to draw you into some of the things that Scott was just mentioning.
Yeah, I think you've highlighted the problem that's happening across the world, and I think there's a few things that are happening, especially in the UK, around how to address that. So there's a group called the Infrastructure Client Group in the UK, which is sort of most of the public bodies that have come together to work out what's a better way to approach the market from a procurement perspective. And for those that are interested to learn more, if you type Project 13 into Google, hopefully you should find it. And what they've done is set out a blueprint of how to do a few things. So going back to risk, is how can you change the relationship of risk between in the commercial arrangements? So less about distributing risk and sharing risk, about contracting against performance and outcomes and not outputs. So that's I think that's a key thing, and that's work that's started on one end. So that's the commercial innovation space. I think on top of that is also, I'm thinking of the work that Alain and I have done with Autodesk and others around looking at business models around data. So at this moment in time, we talk about collaboration, but what does collaboration mean today? And essentially it means that we have to be altruistic around sharing data. We haven't yet created a proper market mechanism for, I have created valuable data and you're going to buy it off me. And I think a root cause of that is our industry is still geared up in drawing drawings for builders to print them out and follow them physically. And all that we've done is turns that from a physical thing on physical paper through to digital paper. What we're just embarking on, and I'm talking about generally, not specifically, is now thinking about, well, those designs should be about creating machine reader, through machine readable formats that feed into types of automation, automated plants, collaborative robotics. We're never going to get rid of the human element, I don't think. I mean, look at the manufacturing process. They are still the requirements for that. It just changes the roles. Tune into my presentation tomorrow for more about it. But I think that's the two worlds. It's the sharing risk, being incentivized around performance and outcomes instead of outputs, and then on the other end is creating a market for the data that you're generating, or it's a bit like taking raw inputs. You go and mine, we're in Australia, right? So we go and mine some raw materials. We do something with it as an intermediary process. We add value to it and then sell that on. We should be doing exactly the same market mechanism for data. Yeah.
So just on that, I mean, Richard, you and I had a really good conversation a couple of weeks ago, just in terms of, looking at the digital maturity, moving from ad hoc all the way up, and we would have seen that IDC report that's recently gone out. But where the contractor wants to be is in a repeatable, being able to repeat some of the processes, but we still are stuck at being in a spot where we're opportunistic. Did you want to just flesh out in terms of a contractor's view on that?
Yeah, we've moved a fair way towards being the repetitive model, but the reality is adoption of any new technologies and having them repeatable in a business context is such a variable. You've got different companies, different skill sets, different drivers, different maturities, new entrants in the marketplace, and everybody's at a different level in adapting and adopting new technology. So, often people are stuck in an ad hoc approach. They then go to an opportunistic approach, and then eventually you get to repeatability. And that's where you get the real value out of technology. I mean, BIM was a classic example. I mean, The first BIM models that we really got ourselves involved with was back in 2007, 2008. Now, the cost BIM drawings back then was probably 2.5, 3 times more as a percentage of contract value than CAD 3D that we were using at the time. Now, it's taken a good 10 years for us to get to a point where that repeatability is there, and we've normalized the cost, and it's just as effective now cost-wise as it was doing on CAD. But that's a process. And it's not only an individual business process, it's a process for our own competition, it's a process for builders, it's a process for other trades to adopt that technology. So, what to do? It means we had to train, we had to, even the education sector needs to change its curriculum. BIM technology is all about trying to get into the mainstream, and it's reached there now. Now, I'm not talking about the next level, the BIM 5D level, because I think that's a whole new world that we're getting into. But certainly up to a LOD of 500, the industry is now standardised with so much. If you look at BIM Map Oz as an example, where they've certainly standardised products, standardised naming conventions, and we can transfer that knowledge from one project to the next, where we're not having to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And that repetition, I think the other thing is it makes the mundane really simple and straightforward and lets us work on the innovation side of our businesses. So I don't want my engineers being stuck doing repetitive menial tasks. Software can do that for us. You really want them to be thinking out of the square and having that value add in the process that our clients are looking for and that differentiates us from another company.
Yeah.
So where are we right now? I think certainly with BIM, we're in that repetitive mode. We've reached there as an industry, but there's still new players coming in, new entrants that need to be trained. What's the new technology? Well, any new technology will take time. But I think the message has got to get through that technology is actually a benefit to business. It'll save time. It is more accurate. It'll minimize waste. It'll produce better buildings, but it'll also enable our engineers really to focus on things that they should be doing outside of just the menial. Yeah. So once I think that value is recognised, I think that digital transformation becomes self-perpetuating because people just hop on board with it. And certainly anybody that doesn't is going to be left behind in the future.
Thanks, Richard. I guess one of the things was, that you really touched on is repetition, managed, optimised, the trajectory of moving. And I know, Alain, you and I have had this conversation for many times, and you've educated me about, being in the hitting zone of optimising or transforming. That is where our margin improves as construction firms. That is where our margin improves in terms of how we utilise space in the future. Picking up on some...
Look, I'd like to be more provocative. I think we
talk
about
procurement
and the role of maybe government. It's got such a procurement arm. I'd like to say I haven't seen a heap loads of market breakthrough brought about by government procurement. I think they can create an environment for it. They can create regulatory environment for it if they so wish. But actually, as a client, they are pretty conservative. I see Matt showing the way with N06 and N09. I see that the truly changed delivery mechanism is with people like Mace that are essentially reimagining how we sell and then how do we deliver against a new promise. And I'll mention a couple of things. The first one is I see those that are industrialized with a new structure of, delivering building like you deliver an aircraft. The first thing they do is we do not go into procurement. We do not. If you want that building built in a novel way, you appoint us. Do not appoint an architect. Do not appoint a PM. Do not get a dual sourced high risk. Do not buy into the old way. Because if you're doing the old way and say throw technology at the old way, it's called a mechanical horse. These people are growing in space, right? The city of Vienna has appointed Cree to deliver 10,000 units, unopposed. BMW is appointing Goldberg to build factories, housing, HQs, unopposed, because ultimately, like the Tesla factory, it gets built twice as fast, 25% cheaper. That needs to be fundamentally integrated in our thinking. Government will not be the ones that first buy these things. It'd be somebody else that says, you know what, I am tired with the old way. And the second observation is how important that market behavior is. If you ask an industrialized industry to deliver to a centrally procured market where the consumer has no way of responding and say, I don't like the product, well, you don't need to look very far. Just go to Russia in 1970 and try to buy a car. The industry is super optimized and they produce ladders. And it's not because they weren't industrialized. It's not because they didn't understand the great design. It's not that they didn't have the best machines. No, they were asked to produce things that have four wheels, complies to a standard, and beggars at the end of the line will be given the product. When I look a flat delivery, when I look at a school delivery, what I see is an industry that is behaving that way because there is nobody going at the end and say, your product is crap. So that's what we need to fix. We need people that start finding customer that says, this is a great product. Don't build it the old way. Build it to me the new way. Let's see what that looks like. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun because, as Matt indicates, 9% less space for more flats. If you're starting to sell rooms that are good night's sleep to a hotel, and that hotel can rent those rooms more reliably, more often for higher customer satisfaction, you know what? They'll stop buying hotels the old way and they'll start buying the new way. And then we'll get classroom in the same way. And then we'll get living rooms in the same way. And every single product category will flip.
Thanks, Alain. So is it a matter, Matt, I mean, we talk about the platform a lot. I mean, the whole point around platformization. We know that in the construction industry, there is potential weakness in internal platforms within the businesses and also from an external perspective. And, you know, we heard from Richard in terms of some of the challenges. Is it about platformization as being the key point to bring this all together?
What is the platform? what you know, we think, I mean, it's quite interesting here in the UK. UCL did a report. They have a University College London, one of our primary academic institutions in the UK, running a kind of a program, sort of complementary to what we're trying to achieve in terms of industry change, called Network Plus. And, you know, they tried to define a platform for construction and they ended up with three. There's three different definitions of it, based on what is the internal business model, the external facing client model, and then the digital model. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily help anyone, I don't think, to have three separate definitions of what in essence is trying to achieve the same thing. I think, you know, totally back up Alain's point around, it's got to be private sector organizations that are committed to change and can see a better way of making things happen. And all of the things that we've talked around in terms of, you know, the technology adoption, the digital transformation, etc., you know, for a new company born out of a situation where you're not hamstrung by the existing processes and the existing people and the existing way of thinking, all of that stuff is just comes second nature, right? It's just what you do. I can't imagine, you know, you talk to the big tech companies of the world, they're not talking about digital transformation and technology adoption, right? They're just built from the internet up. And that's what's going to happen in our industry. That's what these sort of new companies with the new ambitions and the new sort of vision for how this is going to work are now doing. And, you know, that's quite scary for the incumbents within this space. You know, that's a constant threat for me in my role and with my organization. And, you know, it's really difficult to move quick enough. But you can. And the way to do it is you've got to be more open, and you've got to be more collaborative, and you've got to be alive to the opportunity. And that's where we think that the change happens, Sumit. That's where we think we make a difference. So
I know Neil is absolutely chomping at the bit because he wants to answer. I'm trying to fire you guys up. It's early in the UK. Over to you, Neil.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I think it raises an interesting point about sort of the technology industry, and I think there's an interesting opportunity for us, and we have to make sure that we take our and going. You know, Mac's presentation was really good in terms of highlighting our role in society, and it's something really key that we need to highlight here is that, you know, if we want to incentivize people against outcomes, and then we start talking about education. Sorry, my daughter's going to join us in a moment. Talking about education outcomes, health system outcomes. And we're talking about the rapid uptake of technology, we've got an important role to play, not just from a sustainability perspective, but from a data integrity perspective. Like, for us to design our products around social outcomes like healthcare, we have to be trusted with that data. If we jump on the back of the technology firms that are, let's face it, are not trusted with our personal data, if our industry gets tarnished with that brush, we're never going to be able to achieve the level of definition in our design to do that. So I think we've got a very important place to play in terms of that, being trusted with data and making sure that you know, when we're designing hospitals, we're looking and analysing at how people move around those and how those sensitive situations are improved upon. We just have to make sure we take that responsibility. There's an opportunity for us.
Yeah, Scott, I'll just put you on the spot. You know, you've seen it from a different dimensions. You know, so you've worked closely engaging with the client, and we know the challenges as a head contractor that you have, and now working in the specialist field. You know, is the conversation differently, or how do we actually get the leading subcontractors in the room with, say, Matt's team and be able to speak with the clients about what they're going to be delivered, you know, long term?
Look, it's a good question, and it's funny, I was thinking about my last 12 months with the organisation. I think I've learned a lot, and one of the things I've really learned is we, as main contractors, or when I was as a main contractor, or even some of our clients, don't actually understand what the broader supply chain can really do. I don't think they appreciate that some of the capability that sits out there, particularly if I look at our business, our engineering capability, that's better than some of the other design consultant firms that are out there doing the same sort of work. I don't think they tap into the industry enough and ask them, what do you think we should do? Most of the conversation is hovering around the main contractors with those clients. And, you know, government clients are probably the clients I've mostly engaged with in the past. So I think the issue is that how do we then start opening up the conversation to a more broader sort of audience and say, well, what do you guys think we should be doing differently? What is working well elsewhere around the world? What are you guys doing for private clients that we could probably do within our government contracts? Because to me, that's where I see that we are so stifled with red tape. I think we're too, I suppose, open for change. You know, when you're trying to design a hospital gets designed around what people want, not what they're going to get. And then when you try and talk about standardisation and customising stuff, surely we can standardise and customise stuff or modulise stuff a lot more and just put certain standards and specifications in place, and that's what you build it to. But we consult too much. We're too open. And then the other issue we have in our country, and I've noticed it through some of my other board work that I've done, we have different states delivering different specifications to do the same thing. And you can't even standardise specifications across the country to actually get a common Australian approach on how you build things. I mean, we're just so caught up in that. I mean, they're the things for me you have to focus on first. Change the drivers, and then you can engage things differently with the broader industry and open up the conversation to a more wider sort of group of people like ourselves, you know?
Yeah, great answer. Alain, I know you want to jump into that, so please.
Yeah, I was just going to jump into that because, you know, we are here talking amongst friends and supply chain. I think one of the things that we can bring in this industrialized mindset is rethinking what is a supply chain. So once really clear, is that in our industry, construction, we use the word supply chain completely differently from any other industry. Every other industry sees that the way they bring a product together is the strength of the supply chain they have set up. So if we just imagine for a second what the aircraft industry does, there is such a thing called the engineering decoupling point or the order decoupling point, and in function of where that decoupling point sits, that defines who does the design. So for example, the supplier of landing systems to Airbus designs and integrate into the Airbus frame, and they have the responsibility to engineer. They are the expert to know how to design a landing system. And that with that shift of what does the supply chain, how the supply chain is structured, then the airframe manufacturer, in fact, is not a manufacturer, is an integrator, and that redefines how the optimization can take place. So the designer says, this plane is going to land. These are the functional performance requirements from the landing system. Then you go and design something that is the best possible way to land that aircraft and integrates into the airframe. And as soon as you have that mindset, then I think you unlock a lot of things.
So,
and you can see the same in automotive. You can see the same in laptop manufacturing. It's a completely different mindset and a huge role for the supply chain.
So Alain, just on that, you're talking about the parallel workflow. So, you know, we see the work that, say, Richard does with his, you know, vertical risers. But one of the challenges that he would have is investing a lot of time and effort to build those things offsite, but not getting the reward from the client. And not only that, making sure that that's worked into the design process. Richard, I've got to invite you into this, you know, into this one. You know, what are some of the things we can do? I mean, Scott touched on the contractual framework, the procurement framework, but surely we need an approach to this as an industry to drive better outcomes.
Yeah, and look, there's different drivers for different builders, I think, ultimately. There's always a tension between innovation and first principle costs. We spoke about that before. So if I look at currently, I'd suggest safety is a big factor in offsite fabrication. Anything we can modularize, anything we can do vertically where our guys aren't working in shafts, and we're eliminating that risk of injury, and we're eliminating the risk to persons working in there, we'll get a good hearing, and there is some mileage to be had there. But ultimately, it's there because of a driver, which is safety in that instance. So driving innovation through offsite fabrication, modularization, pre-assembly, we all want to do it. We can see the benefits. There's significant benefits in productivity, significant benefits in quality. It's all there. It's not quite as appreciated, if you like, at a head contractor level. Certainly, maybe the English establishment of the contractors may well have a better understanding, because I think England have been doing it a lot longer, and the MEP services that they have over there have adopted or adapted more readily.
But do you think it's... Sorry, Richard, sorry to cut you off, but do you think it's because we're so focused on trade-based thinking in this country or globally? Do you think we're not moving towards a product-style thinking? I mean, Matt touched on it amazingly earlier, where he had those engagement pieces where they were looking at what does a product look like? What does the future product look like?
Yeah. Look, it's true that, you know, we've got a fragmented supply chain. And you know, again, the population, the marketplace that we have doesn't support itself readily to an MEP offering that you have in the UK or other areas in Europe. And that means that ultimately the builder has a choice of different trades rather than holistic trades. Look, we've done multi-service modules. We've worked with other trades to ensure, you know, that we could supplement, if you like, or our own internal capabilities. It's worked to some degrees, but it's still got a long way to go.
Thanks, Richard. Look, we're getting to the pretty much to the wrap-up stage. I think this conversation would go into the evening at the bar. We'd be there for quite some time, knowing some of the characters that are on this webinar today and this conference. But before we go, Neil, I just want you to quickly just touch on the work with the Construction Industry Hub. I think it's an important development work that's going on, and I just wanted to get an update quickly, because I think there are some bits that we're doing in Australia that could be considered as part of that work as well. So.
Sure. Yeah. Just a slight correction. So it's the Construction Innovation Hub. Give that a Google as well. It's part of the funding from the Challenge Construction Fund in the UK. So there's an update on that one. So talk about the platform. So what we're creating is essentially a prototype platform construction system that one develops the capabilities for industry to come along and use those. It's also proving the business case, because as you may appreciate, the capital investment needed to buy warehouses and the manufacturing capability is quite high. So we need to make sure that we help people get over those hurdle costs. There's also the design technique. So how do you change a building, a school, hospital into a volumetric system for the parts, and how you go about doing that, so we can take out some of the really complicated, difficult things around thinking about that, and just providing a platform for industry to move forward on that. I'm not too sure. I know I haven't got a lot of time. We can go into lots of detail.
That's okay. I mean, it's just more to prime for tomorrow's conversation, and it will allow us to build on some of the things that have been said earlier. But look,
sure.
From my perspective, I just wanted to thank everyone for their contribution today. It's great to get the band back together in many respects. It's not easy doing it over in this environment, and you've been incredibly patient. You've set your alarms early, and you've enriched the conference. So I really appreciate everything you do. I want to pick up on some of the points in terms of building a better normal, because we do believe in that as an industry, and we'll work towards that. I might just quickly touch on some closing slides, but before I go, I just wanted to thank Matt for a great keynote, and the energy that you brought today was fantastic. Scott, welcome on board. Really looking forward to getting to meet you in person. Richard, who I've known for a very, very long time, and he's actually great at karaoke. I encourage you to have a few ales with him late at night. He's fantastic. And of course, Neil, the work that you've been involved in for many years, it's been great to watch you and see you develop in your different roles. And of course, my great mate, Alain, thank you for your support as always, my friend. So I'll just click across to a couple of slides that I've got. So just touching on the point, tomorrow we've got some really strong presenters. You'll hear more and more about industrialised construction, what it means. It will move beyond and support some of the conversations. You'll hear from Amy, who I've just recently joined Autodesk Construction Solutions with. Heaps of energy. She'll talk about the rise of the super sub. It's going to be a fantastic session at 9:05 in the morning. And we've got Neil, of course, who will come back and really drive around the Construction Innovation Hub. And thanks for correcting me on that one, Neil. Just some upcoming events from my neck of the woods, some shameless plugging here, but we've got some demonstrations coming up in terms of what we're doing with BIM 360 Docs, but also we're doing a virtual barbecue with a celebrity chef, and please join us for that. A great session today. It was great to be a part of, and thanks a lot. Just some couple of things to note. We've got the big room, which is with something that Autodesk has recently launched, and it's a marketplace. I shouldn't say a marketplace, but it's a communication hub where different parts of the industry can get together and have a chat. I encourage you to get on board. And also we've got Nominate 40 for 40, a program for up and coming leaders in your businesses under the ages of 40. We'd love to celebrate the journey that they've made and the contribution they've made. This year we've got Autodesk University coming up. It's a free event on the 17th to the 20th of November. So please jump on board, and of course our COVID-19 resources are all there and available. So great to be a part of it, and back to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Sumit, as well as Scott, Matt, Alain, Neil, and Richard. That was a really, really insightful session.